Monica Carter was never the type to back down. A powerhouse in the business world, she had earned her place among the elite. But when she arrived at the airport first-class ticket in hand, she was told she didn't belong. Denied entry to the VIP lounge, while others walked in freely. Monica knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a message. What they didn't realize was that they had just picked a fight with the wrong woman. What started as a moment of quiet humiliation quickly escalated into a reckoning. A viral video, a collapsing stock price, and a CEO scrambling to contain the fallout. But Monica wasn't interested in apologies. She was coming for everything. From boardroom battles to high-stakes negotiations, this is the story of how one woman turned rejection into a corporate takeover. How she flipped the script on those who underestimated her and reshaped an entire industry in the process. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Subscribe now for more stories of power, strategy, and unstoppable ambition. Monica Carter strode into the airport terminal with an air of quiet confidence. Dressed in an elegant navy blue suit, her natural curls framed a face that had weathered boardroom battles and Wall Street wars. In her hand, a first-class ticket to London, a well-earned escape after closing a multi-million-dollar deal. She approached the VIP lounge, presenting her ticket to the attendant at the desk. The woman, a middle-aged receptionist with tightly pressed lips and a condescending smirk, barely glanced at it before shaking her head. "I'm sorry, but this lounge is for first-class passengers only," she said, her voice laced with polite disdain. Monica raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "I am flying first class." The woman exhaled sharply, crossing her arms. "There must be a mistake. This lounge is for certain travelers. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in one of our other waiting areas." Monica felt the heat of simmering anger rise, but she kept her composure. She had encountered this before. The subtle, insidious way certain people were deemed out of place. She held up her ticket and passport. "Check again." The receptionist's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I think I know our policy, ma'am." At that moment, a white businessman in jeans and a wrinkled polo shirt strolled past without issue. No ID check. No questioning. "So, that's how it is." Monica took a deep breath, then pulled out her phone. If they wanted to pretend she didn't belong, the world was about to watch her prove otherwise. "Excuse me, everyone," she announced, turning on her live stream. "I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. I, a paying first-class customer, am being denied entry while others walk in without question?" The receptionist stiffened. Around the terminal, passengers paused, sensing a moment worth watching. Within seconds, Monica's video began gaining traction, comments flooding in. "This is discrimination, plain and simple." "Oh, they messed with the wrong one." "Expose them, Monica." The airport manager arrived, a man in a stiff suit, sweat forming at his temples as he assessed the situation. He leaned toward the receptionist, who quickly explained in hushed tones. "I'm afraid our policy is quite clear," he said, looking at Monica with veiled annoyance. "We reserve the right to escort me out?" Monica finished, watching as two security guards appeared behind him. The manager hesitated, then nodded. A slow smile spread across Monica's face. She grabbed her purse and stood. "All right," she said coolly, pocketing her phone. "We'll see each other again soon." She walked away, leaving behind a firestorm of outrage brewing online. Because what they didn't know was that Monica Carter wasn't just another passenger. She was one of the largest shareholders in the airline, and she had no intention of letting this slide. This was only the beginning. Monica Carter strode through the terminal, heels clicking against the polished floor, the controlled fire in her chest burning brighter with each step. Her phone vibrated incessantly, notifications flooding in from the live stream she had just ended. By the time she reached her gate, the video had already amassed over 50,000 views. She took a seat, crossed her legs, and scrolled through the comments. "This is why we need to call them out. Good on you, Monica. Boycott this airline until they change their policies." Someone send this to the CEO. Let's see how they explain this one. She smiled slightly. Oh, they'll explain it soon enough. A flight attendant approached, her expression professional yet wary. Ms. Carter, we're ready to board our first-class passengers. Would you like to pre-board? Monica nodded, rising with purpose. The attendant led her onto the plane, where Monica settled into seat 2A, a spacious first-class suite, complete with a reclining bed and champagne chilling in a silver ice bucket. She barely acknowledged the luxury. Her mind was already turning gears. As she fastened her seatbelt, she opened her email and composed a message. Subject: Incident at Airport Lounge. Immediate action required to. Board of Directors CC. CEO, Chief Customer Experience Officer. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening, I was denied access to our airline's first-class lounge despite holding a fully paid first-class ticket. Meanwhile, other passengers who did not meet the same criteria were allowed entry without question. This blatant act of discrimination was captured on video and is currently going viral, accumulating tens of thousands of views by the minute. I expect an immediate response regarding how this situation will be addressed. As one of our largest shareholders, I refuse to allow this company's reputation to be tarnished by such outdated, prejudiced practices. I look forward to your urgent reply. Best, Monica Carter. She hit send. Then she waited. It didn't take long. 20 minutes into the flight, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. The CEO. Monica let it ring twice before answering, her tone measured but firm. Yes? Monica. His voice oozed forced calm, the way executives sounded when they were trying to contain a PR disaster. I just saw the video. It's unfortunate. Unfortunate? She nearly laughed. What's more unfortunate is that your employees felt comfortable enough to act this way in the first place, she said, swirling her untouched champagne. Look, let's not overreact, the CEO continued. The staff followed standard protocol, did they? Monica interrupted. Because the only protocol I saw was one where a first-class black woman was denied access, while a white economy passenger strolled in unchecked. A pause. We'll investigate the matter internally, he deflected. I'm sure it was a misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding, she cut in. It's a systemic issue. Another pause. Then a sigh. What exactly do you want, Monica? She leaned back in her seat, gaze fixed on the dark sky outside the window. Change, she said simply. The CEO chuckled nervously. Be realistic. Monica's lips curled into a smile. I am. She hung up before he could say anything else. As the plane soared across the Atlantic, she turned her attention back to her phone. The video was still climbing in views. News outlets had picked it up. Social media was ablaze with hashtags demanding accountability. Perfect. Because what the CEO didn't know yet was that Monica Carter wasn't just demanding change. She was about to take it. By the time Monica's plane touched down at Heathrow, the firestorm had become an inferno. Her phone, plugged into the in-flight charger, lit up with back-to-back notifications. Trending 1. Boycott the airline news alert. Major airline faces backlash after viral discrimination video. Statement from airline CEO. We are reviewing the incident and take these matters seriously. She smirked at the last one. Reviewing? They were stalling. Damage control mode. But this wasn't the kind of storm they could contain with a generic apology and a half-hearted diversity initiative. She stepped off the plane, her designer carry-on rolling smoothly beside her. A black luxury sedan was already waiting. Monica had called in a favor. An old colleague at a PR firm had secured her a private driver. The moment she slid into the leather seat, she pulled out her phone and dialed her assistant. Leah, update me. You went from business leader to civil rights icon overnight, Leah said, half joking, but her tone was tinged with urgency. The video is over 5 million views now. Celebrities are retweeting it. The airline stock dropped 3% at market open. Monica nodded, unsurprised. And the board? Leah exhaled. Let's just say they're not. Thrilled with the CEO's response. I have 2 directors requesting a meeting with you first thing tomorrow. Good, Monica said. They should be worried. She ended the call and stared out the tinted window as the London skyline passed by. The power players in this industry liked to believe they were untouchable. They operated under the assumption that they could dictate the rules without consequence. But Monica knew better. She had spent years maneuvering through corporate mazes, learning the game they played. Now, she was about to flip the board. The next morning, Monica entered a high-rise office in the heart of London's financial district. Inside, the airline's boardroom loomed like a battlefield: glass walls, leather chairs, and a long mahogany table where 2 senior directors sat waiting. The men James Holloway and Richard Patel both owned significant stakes in the airline. Their expressions were carefully neutral, but their eyes betrayed their concern. Monica, Holloway began, gesturing for her to sit. Quite the situation we have here. She took her seat with an air of practiced ease. We do. Listen, Patel interjected, leaning forward. We understand your frustration, and frankly, we're embarrassed by the incident. The question is, what do you want? Monica folded her hands on the table. 2 things. First, immediate action against the employees involved. Not just a slap on the wrist policy change, mandatory training, and visible consequences. Holloway hesitated. That's reasonable. And the second? Monica's voice was smooth, but her words were sharp. I want control. Silence. Holloway and Patel exchanged glances. Control? Patel repeated. I'm increasing my stake, Monica clarified. Enough to secure a majority influence in board decisions. Holloway shook his head, exhaling. Monica, buying up shares isn't easy. It is when you already own a sizable chunk, she countered. And when the public is on my side. Investors are panicking. Stock prices are dipping. If I go public about my next move, confidence in leadership will plummet even further. Another heavy silence. Finally, Holloway leaned back. You're playing hardball. Monica's lips twitched into a smile. I'm playing to win. Patel exhaled through his nose, studying her. Then he nodded. We'll arrange a formal discussion with the board. Monica stood. You do that. As she left the building, she checked her phone again. The stock had dropped another 2%. Her influence was already growing, and she was just getting started. Monica Carter didn't waste time. The moment she left the boardroom, she was already making moves. The power structure within the airline was shifting, and she intended to be at the center of it. Sliding into the back seat of her car, she dialed Leah. Status? Monica asked. Leah's voice came through sharp and efficient. Stocks down another 1%. Investors are getting jittery. A few major shareholders are privately discussing their positions. And get this, the CEO is scrambling. He's scheduled an emergency press conference in 2 hours. Monica smirked. Damage control. Exactly. He's going to try and frame this as an isolated incident, promise internal reviews. The usual playbook, Leah said. But I have something better. You remember Carl Yates? Monica's mind immediately clicked into gear. Former VP of Customer Relations. Fired last year. For calling out discriminatory practices in the company, Leah added. He's willing to talk. Monica's smirk widened. Perfect. Set up a call, she ordered. And while you're at it, I want a full list of the airline's top shareholders. We need to know who's open to selling. Leah paused, then said, You're really going for it, huh? Monica's eyes glinted. This isn't just about me. Leah, if they think they can keep operating like it's still the 1950s, they're about to get a rude awakening. An hour later, Monica was in her hotel suite, sipping espresso while Carl Yates's face appeared on her laptop screen. He was in his home office, looking older, but just as sharp as she remembered. Monica Carter, he greeted. Didn't think I'd be hearing from you again. You were right about the company, she said without preamble. I should have pushed harder back then. Yates exhaled. Yeah, well, you were still climbing the ladder. You had more to lose. And now, Monica said, I have more power. He chuckled. That you do. So what's the play? Monica leaned forward. I want everything you know. Internal reports, complaints that were buried, any proof that this isn't an isolated incident. Yates didn't hesitate. I kept receipts, he said. Emails. Internal memos. A few whistleblowers who might be willing to talk off the record, at least for now. Monica's mind was already racing. Send me everything you've got. I'll handle the rest. Yates nodded. And what happens when you win? I changed the game, she said simply. By the time the airline's CEO stepped onto the stage for his press conference, Monica was already 3 steps ahead. She sat in her hotel suite, watching the live broadcast on her TV. The CEO, Robert Langford, stood behind a podium, the company's logo glowing behind him. He looked calm, but Monica saw the tension in his posture. We take these matters very seriously, he said. We are committed to reviewing our policies and ensuring that all passengers are treated with dignity and respect. Monica scoffed. Predictable. As Langford droned on about internal training and company values, Monica's phone buzzed. A message from Leah. Leah, check your email. Yates delivered. And it's big. Monica opened the file attachment. Within seconds, her expression hardened. It was worse than she thought. Hidden complaints. Discrimination cases swept under the rug. Employees retaliated against for speaking up. This wasn't just one bad incident. It was a pattern, a culture. Monica's fingers tightened around her phone. Langford thought this was over. He had no idea his time was running out. Monica Carter had played the corporate game long enough to recognize the moment when a company's foundation began to crack. The airline was teetering. Stock prices were falling, public outrage was growing. And now, she had something even more dangerous proof. Sitting at the sleek marble desk in her hotel suite, she scrolled through the files Carl Yates had sent. Every page was a damning indictment of the company's practices. Internal complaints about racial discrimination ignored. Emails between executives discussing keeping the brand image polished instead of addressing bias. Employees who had spoken up mysteriously pushed out through sudden departmental restructuring. Monica exhaled slowly, pressing her fingertips together. They buried this. But I'm about to dig it all up. She picked up her phone and dialed Leah. You read the files? Monica asked. I did, Leah said, her voice tight with anger. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Maybe even a full-blown federal investigation, if someone pushes hard enough. Monica's lips curled slightly. Exactly. Which means the board is about to be very open to negotiation. A beat of silence. Then Leah said, so what's the next move? Monica's mind was already running through the next steps. First, we leak enough to hint at the full scope of the problem, just enough to shake investor confidence further. But the real play, she paused. I need to start buying more shares. Leah hesitated. That's not going to be easy. The board won't just let you take over. Monica smiled. They won't have a choice. By the next morning, the cracks had widened. A Business Insider article had just gone live, featuring anonymous sources detailing the airline's history of discrimination. News networks picked it up within the hour. Monica scrolled through Twitter as hashtags flared up again. Breaking news. Former airline employees come forward about systemic bias within company practices. Trending. Hashtag accountability now. Then came the email Monica had been waiting for. Subject. Urgent board meeting request. Ms. Carter. The board of directors would like to invite you to a private meeting to discuss the ongoing situation. Given your position as a major shareholder, we value your input in resolving this matter swiftly. Sincerely, James Holloway. Senior board member. Monica leaned back in her chair, a slow smile forming. Now they want to talk. The boardroom was different this time. The tension in the air was thick, the usual. Arrogance replaced with unease. Monica took her seat at the long table, facing the directors she had once simply coexisted with. James Holloway was the first to speak. "Monica, we need to contain this." She crossed her legs, tilting her head slightly. "Contain what exactly?" He exhaled. "The company is hemorrhaging money. Investors are nervous. The stock is in freefall. This needs to end before it does permanent damage." Monica let the silence stretch before she finally spoke. "You know what's funny, James? You say permanent damage, like this is some external crisis that just happened to you. But this was built into the system. You all allowed this culture to thrive." A few board members shifted uncomfortably. "What do you want?" Holloway asked. Monica's voice was steady, her gaze unwavering. "I want Langford gone. Effective immediately." A murmur rippled through the room. "Monica," one of the other directors started, "you can't just demand—" "I can," she cut in. "And I am—" She leaned forward. "Unless, of course, you'd rather let this escalate to an SEC investigation. Because I have the receipts to make that happen." Silence. Then, after a long pause, Holloway sighed. "We'll put it to a vote." Monica smiled. Checkmate. The boardroom sat in uneasy silence. Monica Carter had played her hand, and now she watched as the directors absorbed the weight of her ultimatum. James Holloway, usually composed, rubbed his temples. "You have to understand, removing a CEO isn't as simple as snapping our fingers." Monica met his gaze, unflinching. "No, James. What you have to understand is that keeping Langford is more dangerous than removing him. Every second he remains in charge, the company loses credibility, customers, and investor confidence." She slid her phone across the table, screen glowing with the latest headlines. Breaking: calls for airline CEO's resignation grow amid discrimination scandal. Financial report. Stock drops 7% as crisis deepens. Insider leaks. Pattern of racial bias in airline culture. If you wait too long, Monica continued, there won't be a company left to protect. A murmur spread through the directors. A few exchanged uneasy glances, while others stared at their laptops, likely watching the stock price sink in real time. Then Richard Patel, one of the more pragmatic voices on the board, spoke. "What's your endgame, Monica? You don't just want Langford gone. You want more than that." Monica leaned forward, resting her elbows on the polished mahogany table. "I do. And I'll be clear about it." Her voice was calm but firm, the voice of someone who had already won. "I'm increasing my stake in the company. I'm positioning myself for real decision-making power." "You're forcing a takeover," one of the older board members muttered. Monica smiled slightly. "I'm facilitating change. Whether you want to be on the right side of it is up to you." Holloway sighed. "We'll vote now." A hush fell over the room as each board member typed their decision into the internal system. The process took less than 3 minutes, but to some it probably felt like an eternity. A chime sounded. The results appeared on the screen at the front of the room. Vote to remove CEO Robert Langford. Yes, 8 no, 3. Monica allowed herself a small breath of satisfaction. Holloway turned to her, his expression resigned. "It's done. Langford will be asked to resign by the end of the day." Monica stood, smoothing her blazer. "Good. Now I suggest we get ahead of the media narrative." Patel narrowed his eyes. "Meaning?" "Meaning," she said, "we don't let Langford play the disgraced martyr card. We frame this as a necessary evolution of the company, a step toward a future that values all passengers equally." Some of the directors nodded. Others still looked wary. But no one outright opposed her. Holloway sighed. "You'll want to speak to Langford yourself." Monica's lips curled. "Oh, I absolutely do." Langford's office was perched high above the city, offering an unobstructed view of the skyline, a throne he had occupied for too long. But today, he wasn't the king anymore. Monica entered without knocking. Langford sat behind his desk, jaw clenched, hands folded, as if bracing for impact. "You've made quite a mess," he said bitterly. Monica tilted her head. "No, you did. I just made sure people saw it." Langford exhaled through his nose. "You think this makes you a hero?" "No," Monica replied smoothly. "It makes me right." He leaned back, eyeing her. "You've already won, so let's skip the lecture. What do you really want?" Monica took a seat across from him, crossing her legs. "I want your resignation. No drawn-out statements. No blaming miscommunication. Just leave." Langford scoffed. "And if I don't?" Monica smiled. "Then the full extent of what I have goes public. Every buried complaint. Every suppressed report. The company will survive. You won't." Silence. Then, slowly, Langford reached into his desk, pulled out a blank sheet of paper, and picked up a pen. The king had fallen, and Monica Carter had just taken the throne. Monica Carter watched as Robert Langford, once the untouchable CEO of the airline, scrawled his resignation onto the crisp sheet of company stationery. The scratching of his pen was the only sound in the vast office, the weight of his downfall pressing against the thick glass windows that overlooked the city skyline. He placed the pen down, exhaled sharply, and slid the paper across the desk toward her. His expression was a mixture of resentment and reluctant acceptance. "There," he muttered. "Satisfied?" Monica picked up the document, scanning the words with quiet precision. A slow smile spread across her face. "Almost," she said. Langford narrowed his eyes. "What now?" "You'll make a statement," Monica said, slipping the resignation into her leather-bound folder. "A clean statement. No blaming external factors, no passive-aggressive jabs at recent challenges. You step down with dignity, or I make sure the world knows exactly how much rot was under your leadership." Langford leaned back in his chair, studying her as if seeing her for the first time. "You really don't let up, do you?" Monica's smile didn't waver. "That's why I'm sitting here and you're signing resignation papers." He huffed out a bitter laugh but nodded. "Fine. You'll get your statement. But don't think for a second that this boardroom will just hand you the company." Monica stood, gathering her things. "I don't need them to hand me anything," she said. "I'm taking it." She turned on her heel and walked out, leaving Langford to sit in the ruins of his own making. By the time Monica reached her hotel suite, her phone was already buzzing. Breaking news: CEO Robert Langford steps down amid growing controversy. Stock market watch. Airline stock stabilizes as leadership change announced. Public statement from Langford. Effective immediately. I am stepping down to allow the company to move forward in a new direction. Monica smirked at the phrasing. A new direction, indeed. She dialed Leah. "Tell me you saw the news," Monica said as she shrugged off her blazer. Leah laughed. "Oh, I saw it. Social media is eating this up. Investors are already reacting positively, and customers are actually hopeful for once." "Good," Monica said. "Now it's time for phase 2. "You mean securing the takeover?" Leah asked. Monica sat at the edge of her bed, fingers drumming against her knee. "Exactly. Langford's out, but the board still thinks they can control the narrative. We need to move fast before they install another puppet in his place." Leah was silent for a beat. "You're planning to force the board's hand?" Monica smiled. "Leah, I've been forcing their hand from the moment they let that receptionist deny me entry to the lounge. They just didn't realize it." Leah sighed, but there was admiration in her voice. "All right. What do you need from me?" "Start making calls," Monica instructed. "I need to know which shareholders are willing to sell their stakes. We don't need a full majority, just enough to tip the balance in my favor." "You think they'll go for it?" Monica exhaled. "Right now their shares are unstable. Some of them will want to cut their losses before things get riskier. We use that to our advantage." Leah's voice sharpened. "Understood. I'll get started." Monica ended the call and leaned back against the pillows. The first battle had been won. Now, it was time to take the empire. Monica Carter had never been one for half measures. Taking down Robert Langford was only step one. Now, the real work began. Sitting in her hotel suite, she watched the financial markets react to the news of Langford's resignation. The airline stock had initially dipped when the scandal broke, but after his departure, it had begun stabilizing. Investors were watching to see what would happen next. That meant Monica had a small window of opportunity to strike. Her phone buzzed. "Leah." "Talk to me," Monica said, standing to pour herself a glass of water. "I've spoken to 3 major shareholders so far," Leah said, her tone sharp with urgency. 2 are nervous and considering selling. The third? More stubborn, but money talks. Monica took a slow sip. "How much do we need to tip the scales?" Leah rustled some papers. "You already own 18% of the company. If we secure another 15%, we'll have controlling influence. Not quite a full majority, but enough to dictate major decisions." Monica paced to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over London. "We buy up everything we can. Offer above market value if necessary. I want a seat at the head of that table before they even think about replacing Langford." Leah hesitated. "Mon, this is going to cost. Even with your assets, it's risky." Monica smirked. "Leah, when have I ever played it safe?" Silence. Then Leah chuckled. "All right. I'll set up the meetings." Monica ended the call and exhaled slowly. The next 48 hours would decide everything. The first meeting was with David Caldwell, a longtime investor who held a 6% stake in the airline. He was an old-school businessman, gray hair, tailored suit, a believer in stability over disruption. He sat across from Monica in the private lounge of an exclusive club, sipping espresso as he eyed her carefully. "You've certainly shaken things up, Ms. Carter," he said, setting his cup down. "And now you want to buy me out?" Monica smiled politely. "I want to offer you an opportunity to exit before things get unpredictable." Caldwell chuckled. "That's just a polite way of saying before you take control." She didn't deny it. He leaned back. "I won't lie, Monica. The board is scrambling. They weren't prepared for Langford to fall so quickly. Some of them are already backing potential replacements. If you want real power, you need to move fast." Monica folded her hands. "Which is why I'm offering you 15% above market value for your shares. Liquidate now, and you walk away with more than you would if the stock keeps fluctuating." Caldwell studied her, tapping a finger against the table. "And if I refuse?" Monica's smile didn't waver. "Then you roll the dice on whether the next CEO makes things better or worse. But let's be honest, you wouldn't have taken this meeting if you weren't already considering selling." A long pause. Then Caldwell nodded. "You've got a deal." By the end of the day, Monica had secured another 7% of shares. It wasn't enough. Yet, the board had scheduled a meeting in 48 hours to discuss appointing an interim CEO. Monica knew if she didn't act before then, they'd install another figurehead, someone to maintain the status quo. That couldn't happen. She needed just one more push. Her phone buzzed. Another call from Leah. "Got another lead," Leah said. "A hedge fund investor, Nathan Pierce. He owns 8% of the company. Word is, he's not happy with how the board's handling this mess." Monica's pulse quickened. 8%. If she landed this deal, she'd have enough leverage to dictate the airline's future. "Set the meeting," she said. Leah chuckled. "Already did. You're seeing him tomorrow." Monica took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. She was close. So damn close. And nothing was going to stop her now. Monica Carter didn't believe in luck. She believed in leverage. As she stepped into the penthouse conference room where Nathan Pierce was waiting, she knew this meeting would determine everything. He was the final piece. The 8% of shares he controlled would give her the deciding influence over the airline's future. Nathan stood as she entered, offering a firm handshake. He was in his early 40s, tall, sharp-eyed, with the air of a man who calculated everything. "Ms. Carter," he greeted. "You've certainly made things interesting these past few days." Monica smiled as she took a seat. "I don't waste time." He chuckled, taking a sip of his whiskey. "That's clear. So, let's talk. You want my shares. Convince me." Monica leaned forward, her voice steady. "You've seen the numbers. Langford's exit stabilized the stock, but the board is trying to push for an insider as his replacement, someone who'll keep things exactly as they are." Nathan nodded, swirling his drink. "And you think you should be the one to change that?" Monica met his gaze. "I know I should. This company is sitting on a PR disaster that goes beyond what happened to me. It's a systemic issue, and the only way to fix it is to clean house starting from the top." Nathan studied her, unimpressed. "Sounds noble, but noble doesn't make money." Monica smirked. "It does when you do it right." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a detailed proposal outlining her strategy for rebranding the airline. A full internal audit of discriminatory practices, a public commitment to equity and inclusion, a restructuring of customer service policies to rebuild trust, a targeted PR campaign to turn the controversy into a positive transformation story. "You invest in me, Nathan," she continued. "And you're not just backing a CEO, you're backing a movement." Public perception shifts fast. People don't just want change, they want to see it happen. And when they do, they'll choose us over the competition. That means brand loyalty. That means profit. Nathan flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable. Then he set the folder down and steepled his fingers. "Interesting pitch. But here's the problem: why should I back you over whoever the board chooses?" Monica's smile didn't waver. "Because by the time they choose anyone, I'll already be in control." She pulled out a second document, her updated stock position. With Caldwell's shares and the other silent investors she had secured, she was sitting at 39% ownership. If Nathan sold to her, she'd hit 47%. Not quite an outright majority, but enough to dictate decisions. Nathan exhaled slowly, tapping his fingers against the table. "You really don't play it safe, do you?" Monica chuckled. "Not when I play to win." A beat of silence. Then, finally, Nathan nodded. "You've got yourself a deal." By the time Monica left the meeting, Leah was already on the phone with her. "Tell me you locked it in," Leah said. Monica slid into the back seat of her car, smiling. "We just secured 47%. Leah let out a sharp breath. "Mon, that means it means," Monica interrupted. "The board doesn't get to choose the next CEO." "I do." Leah laughed. "Damn. So what's the move?" Monica's eyes gleamed. "Call Holloway. Tell him to schedule an emergency board meeting." She leaned back in her seat as the city lights blurred past. Tomorrow, she wouldn't just be a shareholder. Tomorrow, she would take the airline for good. The boardroom was full. Every director, every major stakeholder silent, waiting. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. At the head of the table, Monica Carter stood tall, poised, and completely in control. This wasn't just another meeting. This was the moment she had been orchestrating from the start. James Holloway, the senior board member, cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, you called this emergency session. Let's hear your proposal." Monica clasped her hands in front of her. "It's simple. The airline needs a leader who understands both business and the customers we serve. A leader who can not only restore trust, but turn this company into the industry standard for equity and service excellence." She let her words settle. Then she dropped the final move. "I nominate myself as the new CEO." A murmur spread across the table. A few board members exchanged uncertain glances, while others visibly tensed. Monica Holloway sighed, rubbing his temple. "This is unprecedented." She smiled. "So is the situation we're in." Richard Patel, one of the more strategic minds on the board, leaned forward. You own 47% of the company now. That gives you considerable influence, but not a majority. Monica nodded. Which means you can block me. But ask yourselves, do you really want to? She turned to the projector screen behind her, clicking a remote. A series of slides appeared: financial forecasts, customer data, and a social sentiment analysis that showed public opinion was shifting in favor of a leadership overhaul. The numbers speak for themselves, Monica continued. Since Langford resigned, stock volatility has decreased. Consumer confidence is climbing. But if the public thinks you're resisting change, it'll tank again. Silence. Monica pressed further. Investors are watching. Customers are watching. If you fight this, you're telling the world that you'd rather cling to outdated power structures than do what's best for this company. Holloway exhaled slowly. You realize what you're asking? I realize what I'm offering, Monica countered. A future where this airline isn't just recovering, it's thriving. But you need a leader bold enough to take us there. The room was quiet again. This time, the tension was different. Holloway looked around the table. Let's put it to a vote. The board members typed their decisions into the internal system. Seconds ticked by. Then vote to appoint Monica Carter as CEO. Yes, 7 no, for a breath of silence. Then Patel nodded. Motion passed. Monica smiled, small, controlled, victorious. Congratulations, Ms. Carter, Holloway said. The airline is now yours to lead. Later that evening, Monica stood in the newly redesigned VIP lounge, champagne in hand. The media had already caught wind of the news, and the headlines were everywhere. Breaking news. Monica Carter named first black woman CEO of major airline. Financial report. Airline stock surges 10% following leadership overhaul. Public reaction. New era of air travel begins. She looked around. The lounge had been revamped with a modern, inclusive design, welcoming to everyone. Then, she spotted an elderly black woman stepping inside, eyes wide with quiet awe. Monica smiled. She walked over and extended a hand. Welcome to first class. The woman beamed. Feels good to finally belong. Monica nodded. It does. She raised her glass to the future. The game wasn't just won. She had changed it. Monica Carter's journey wasn't just about taking back power, it was about changing the game for good. From a single act of discrimination to owning the very airline that tried to shut her out, she proved that resilience, strategy, and bold action can rewrite the rules. And this is just the beginning. If you loved this story, make sure to subscribe for more powerful narratives that keep you on the edge of your seat. Let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from?